news for people missing gatherings in BC. Changes are coming, even as we all feel the grief and the grind of a year in this pandemic.
It's been a challenging year for us all, and now is the time again to remember to redouble our efforts.
Every Canadian we lost to this virus will be remembered. Every shift done by a frontline nurse, every mask made by a Canadian worker will not be forgotten.
On the one-year anniversary of the global pandemic, the Prime Minister designating March 11th as National Day of Observance.
So the weather in our area has been gorgeous. If you're in the sun, you don't even need a coat while you're outside. So if you're thinking about getting in and starting to clear out the garden, a warning from some experts, there may be such thing as too early.
Most of our bees are actually wild bees, and many of them are solitary, and about 80% of those actually nest in the ground.
And I'll just stop it there. It's been a challenging year for us all, and now is the time again to remember to redouble our efforts, to remember to be kind to each other, because that is what makes a difference.
BC's top doctors showing what many of us are feeling 1 year to the day that COVID-19 was deemed a pandemic. And 1 year since our world began to shrink in ways we couldn't imagine, a small step now on our way back to opening up. Gatherings of up to 10 people outside now allowed.
It's kind of 2 families worth for the most part. So yes, go out and play a game in the park. Go out and have a picnic, have a barbecue in your backyard, but keep your distance, like we used to do last summer, where we could have those events where we're not getting close enough to each other, and don't have an indoor component to it, because that's when we know it can spread much more quickly.
This move comes as the province continues to see around 500 new cases every day. So the restriction on indoor gatherings continue, and you need to continue to be mindful.
Focus again when you're back indoors on the things that we know will prevent the spread. So wearing masks, making sure you're not going if you're sick, making sure that that you do keep your group small. Go with your family or your household to the restaurant. Keep those distances.
But keep the distance small when it comes to travel.
Over March break, if you are a family and you're going to your cabin and you're self-contained, that's okay. But we really need to stick to our household, stick to our limited travel.
And if you're living in a hot spot, stay put.
And we do not want people to travel from those areas to an area of low risk. And we don't want people to visit an area that is high risk right now, because those communities are trying to manage the outbreak in their community right now. And it puts you at risk, and then you bring that home with you.
More restrictions could be eased in weeks to come, depending if BC continues on a trend that we've been on. But for now, fire up that barbecue, dust off that patio furniture, and enjoy seeing a few faces from outside your household. For City News in Victoria, I'm News 1130's Lisa Eusda.
I want life to return to normal as much as possible.
1 year after COVID-19 was officially classified as a pandemic, many people's lives have changed. Just ahead, your thoughts and feelings about the last year and what lies ahead.
There are 569 new cases of COVID-19 being reported across the province tonight, and 3 more people have died in the last 24 hours. 244 people are currently in hospital, with 68 listed in intensive care. And there are 11 new cases involving variants in BC. So far, more than 366,000 doses of the vaccine have been administered across the province. People over 85 and Indigenous people over 65 are now allowed to book themselves an appointment for a vaccination. You can visit our website, citynews1130.com, for more information.
On this National Day of Observance for COVID-19, we remember the people we've lost: grandparents and parents, brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues. Each one was loved. Each one was special.
A year after the World Health Organization declared COVID a global pandemic, the Prime Minister designating March 11th as a National Day of Observance to remember the more than 22,000 Canadians who lost their lives to the virus.
Every Canadian we lost to this virus will be remembered. every shift done by a frontline nurse, every mask made by a Canadian worker will not be forgotten.
Parliamentarians all taking their turn commemorating the solemn anniversary. The leader of the NDP highlighting those hardest hit.
Our seniors, particularly seniors living in long-term care, were those who bore the brunt of this pandemic with the worst conditions and with their lives. And it is a national shame that that's the case.
The leader of the official opposition also calling attention to the indirect victims of the pandemic.
In British Columbia, there have been 60% more deaths from the opioid epidemic than from COVID-19. Increasing rates of domestic violence have been the shadow pandemic this past year. Youth mental health, presenting as anxiety or eating disorders, are alarmingly on the rise.
But while politicians mark the anniversary with concern and kind words, thousands of Canadians mark the anniversary missing a loved one.
I miss my mother terribly. She was a very huge part of my life. We were a very, very close family.
Barbara Schneider lost her 92-year-old mother Mary to COVID in April of last year.
My mother did not die with her loved ones, and that will haunt me forever. We could not be with her, and that haunts me.
For Jennifer Madar, who lost her father Teddy, the pandemic has exposed how Canadians value the elderly.
I think that at the very core and fundamentally, it boils down to our values. How do we regard our elderly in this country? And clearly what the pandemic exposed is that we don't regard them as highly as we think we do.
To date, more than 22,000 Canadians are among the more than 2.5 million COVID-19 deaths worldwide. In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
Here we are a year later, but I think we're over the hump and I'm so happy.
What were you doing 1 year ago, back when life looked a bit more normal? 1 year into COVID-19, we're asking people how their lives have changed and what they're hoping for in the months to come.
I had been indoors more than I ever thought I would for the last 365 days.
Since Christmas, I've had my father home with me. We took him out of long-term care.
My whole year was difficult. Not being able to see family, not being able to get the help, the support that any new mom should have.
It was about a year ago now when we had to cancel our concert series and couldn't see our families.
After the first 3 months, probably like by just before last summer, then you're really realizing all the things you couldn't do. You're starting to feel it.
A year ago today, I took my son for dinner at the boathouse for his birthday down here at Kitsilano, and that was the last time I was in a restaurant, so I really remember that really well.
We were booked to go to Japan in, let's see, we were supposed to fly out in May, I believe, and well, it looked pretty dodgy.
Vaccination, bring it on.
The freedom to go wherever I want, whenever, and not have to worry about booking in advance, that kind of stuff.
To get together with my kids. That's my main thing. Yeah, I just want to see my children again.
I want to get vaccinated. I want to get on an airplane again. I want to see more friends. I want life to return to normal as much as possible.
In Vancouver, Miranda Fatour, City News.
A woman has now died from her injuries after an assault in New Westminster last week, and homicide investigators have taken over the case. On Tuesday, March 2nd, police were called to a home on Princess Street, not far from 2nd Street. The woman was taken to hospital and a man was taken into custody. It's believed the suspect and the victim knew each other. 42-year-old Andy Well Mullings has since been charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. Vancouver police are investigating a serious incident outside an East Vancouver Walmart. Police were called to this parking lot on Grandview Highway near Boundary Road on Sunday night. A number of people witnessed a confrontation between a man and woman just after 8 o'clock. Police were called, but the couple couldn't be located. VPD want to speak with anyone who was in the area at the time.
At least one person saw a man and a woman having some kind of a dispute while standing near a black Dodge Challenger that was parked here in the southwest corner of the parking lot. This dispute was concerning enough to the witness that he alerted somebody inside the Walmart store behind me and asked that person to phone the police. By the time the worker phoned the police and came outside to see what was going on, that vehicle had driven away.
Police are appealing for witnesses who were in the area at the time. Officers are particularly interested in speaking with a white man in his 60s with gray hair and a beard who was driving a gray SUV. They believe he may have seen something that can help with the investigation. 3 people were taken to hospital after a high-speed crash in West Vancouver. Police say the driver of a BMW was performing stunts on Cypress Bowl Road when the accident happened. The 20-year-old man was attempting to drift through a tight turn at high speed when he lost control. He skidded across 2 lanes and hit a rock face before he crashed into a parked SUV. Police say the stunt caused more than $50,000 worth of damage and say the crash should serve as a warning to other drivers.
Up there, speed is definitely a concern all year round. Even now in March, the weather conditions up there can change drastically and dramatically very quickly. So, the mountain is still open for skiing. A lot of people up there enjoying the outdoors. And now we have sort of a mixture of mountain bikers who are using the space as well as people enjoying the mountain up top. So traffic can be quite busy. And in this case, we're lucky that nobody was coming down the mountain at that time, as the vehicle did skid across 2 oncoming lanes.
The new driver was issued a ticket for driving without due care and attention. He was also given 6 points on his license and a $368 fine. A blistering pace for home sales across the province. That's how the BC Real Estate Association is describing things after a record-setting February. It points to near-record sales in Metro Vancouver combined with unprecedented housing demand outside of the region. Last month, BC home sales were 89% higher than the same time a year ago and 1,000 units higher than the previous February record that was set in 2016. The hotly debated bike lane will be back in Stanley Park. The Vancouver Park Board approved a temporary bike lane at their meeting last night. The lane will be along Park Drive to help reduce overcrowding on the seawall. Some businesses in the area say it will be devastating to their bottom line, but others say it will give cyclists more room to get around.
It's very important that we talk that this is not a ban on cars in Stanley Park. It's simply allowing 2 different modes of transportation, automobiles and bicycles, to access the road.
The bike lane will be reinstated immediately and will be in place until the end of October.
Yeah, I'm tempted myself. It's beautiful out and things are starting to bloom.
The weather here in Metro Vancouver has been gorgeous over the last few days, and if you have a home garden, you might be tempted to get out there and start clearing it out for the new season. But there's a warning that this stuff that looks like gardening garbage might actually be pretty useful, and it's not quite time to clear it out.
We aren't aware of it, but our garden is actually this living space for these species that are overwintering there. So it's really this coming year's bee crop, which is very important for biodiversity, but also for food production, for seed production of all kind.
She says some species of bees lay their eggs into hollow stems, or other species like bumblebees are likely living in leaf or mulch stacks. When we talk about bees, we're not talking about the same types of bees as, say, the hornet that we go to Home Depot and buy a can of Raid for. This is a different kind of bee, isn't it?
Yeah, so bees are their own group, distinct from wasps and hornets. You may see sort of these little, almost like wasp-like things. Sometimes they're wasps, but often they're actually small solitary bees. I think people are prompted, maybe this is dangerous, maybe it can harm me, but these 450 species, the vast majority of them do not sting very often. It would be very rare.
Why do we like the bees? What do they do for us?
Okay, so bees are at the heart of a lot of our food systems. So if you drink coffee, that was pollinated by a bee. If you eat an apple, it was most likely pollinated by a bee. And a lot of times these are wild bees. These are, honeybees are brought into some of these agroecosystems, but a lot of the pollination is also done by wild bees, blueberries, cranberries.
Okay, so just how long should we wait before getting in the garden and clearing it out?
As a biologist, I remember being taught quite early on that at t-shirt weather, a lot of things start flying when you feel like wearing a t-shirt most multiple days in a row.
She says the more of that natural stuff you leave in the garden, the better. But if you want to clear some, to trust your eyes. If they're out flying around, it means they're no longer so reliant on this stuff. At UBC, David Zura, City News.
Very exciting. Spring's just around the corner. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thank you for watching and have a great night.